Hello, class. I know that I've said this before that worldwide, or that this chapter or that chapter is my favorite. Okay, this one is my favorite too. So far, I'm running about half of the book is my favorite chapter. I like doing research on this area. Well, let's continue. Globalization. Yes, we're becoming more interdependent. Uh, we may not like Venezuela or the government, the administration of Venezuela, especially under Hugo Chavez. I mean, that's what the U.S. basically didn't like him. But do you realize that we were buying a whole lot of oil from them, and they were buying things from us? Not only that, I mean, well, anyway, so you can see we're interdependent, even if we didn't want to be. With the Chinese, our government is so afraid of secrets going over there, and yet we buy so much stuff from them. Connectivity. If you were to take a look at the relationships that social media has created, you would see, well, just mine as an example. On a daily basis, I'm looking at postings or comments from Germany, from Argentina, from Brazil, from Mexico, the US, Romania. Those are the 6 countries that I've got online. Companies are connecting all over the place. Coca-Cola is located in more countries than there are in the United Nations. Can you believe that? How can Coca-Cola be working with more companies than there are or countries than there are in the United Nations? Our economies are being integrated socially. I mean, you take a look at the Rio Grande Valley and you say, is it really Mexico or is it the U.S.? And on the Mexican side, they say the same thing too. Is this the United States or is it Mexico? Anyway, outsourcing opportunities are all over the place. Countries want to supply to us. And you know what? We would like to sell stuff to them. There are markets over there. I mean, there are places that want to buy things for us. You wouldn't believe what it is like when the Brazilians travel to the United States with empty suitcases. And these are the big, humongous suitcases. And they bring them over empty. They buy clothing like you wouldn't believe, and electronics, and when they go back home, the customs people there, they just let them, they say, come on through, and they're buying all sorts of clothing from Miami and New York and Houston also. One of the issues we have with globalization is trade balance. It seems that with China, for years we have been running a huge imbalance. We buy more than we sell there. And we can't blame them. I mean, hey, buy more from us. I can't force anybody to buy more from us, from me or whatever. And do we want to stop buying from them? It's so cheap. Yeah, I want more expensive clothes. I'll buy them someplace else. No, we don't do that. Why do we buy worldwide? Well, price and our cost and price is so much lower. Quality is good. We have technology that we can get a hold of. Maybe it's the only place to get stuff. Maybe, and I don't think we do this on purpose, but our competition, our domestic suppliers say, hey, you know what? We got to lower costs. If our suppliers in the U.S. know that we're buying from other sources, they usually tend to lower their costs because they know that they're having to compete also. Our competitors are doing the same things, and we have to do that. Maybe we want to establish a presence in a foreign market, and they're saying, hey, if you want to sell to us, you also have to buy from us. What are the barriers? Well, the lack of knowledge and skills. Just as we don't seem to travel much or have a penchant for knowing about other places, that is a big problem. We don't know about the paperwork. Sometimes it's resistance to change. I once heard an engineer from John Deere say, the day they put a Russian bearing in one of my tractors, it will be over my dead body. That really does make an impression on you. It's not the right thing to do or to say, but yeah, people are resistant. Sometimes there are long lead times of getting materials from another country to our country, and that's a problem. And of course, we have different business customs, language, and culture, and this has a big influence on how we buy from other countries. Finally, on this slide, we talk about currency fluctuations. One is, can you convert let's say, Vietnamese currency into American currency? How do you convert that? And second, how do we know if it's going up or down over the long term or short term? We need to know those things because it may not make sense to enter into a contract for 2 or 3 years when we don't even know about their currency or where it's headed. Now, one of the things we need to look at is how do we go from domestic purchasing to international? What are the forces? Well, it could be that we don't find suppliers in the US, or maybe our competitors are already using suppliers overseas and we want to do the same thing because they're getting lower prices. Another thing, too, is that we need information. We need to do our research, our homework. And once that we do find out where to go, we need to select our suppliers. How do we go about working with people that we don't even understand their language? We need to hire somebody internally, and we hope that understands their culture and their language, and we hope that they have somebody who speaks English. And of course, cultural understanding of not doing the wrong thing when you're negotiating, to do the right thing. And this is all because of language and communication differences. Now, there are logistical issues as far as trucking. Let's say within the country, let's say that you get a very good supplier inland in China. How are you going to get it from Western China to the coast? Are there good highways? Are their trucks reliable, and so on? There are legal issues, what you can and cannot do within their own country. And maybe you don't know them. Hopefully your supplier knows them and they communicate this to you. There might be counter trade requirements that instead of you taking money or currency or dollars out of the country, maybe they would like for you to, let's say that you're selling something or buying something, that you help them with their exports of their products. Of course, counter trade is not such an issue with purchasing. It's more on the marketing and sales side. There are costs associated with international purchasing that are not readily available or visible. We have cultural issues and the time it takes to clarify something and expediting and so on. And as I've mentioned earlier on a previous slide, currency risk is an issue when going from domestic to international. How do we go about selecting a foreign supplier? First of all, is there a cost difference? Yes, there better be a good cost difference, because now you're having to go across cultural, language, distance, and other problems there. You want to know, well, will the foreign supplier maintain the price differential, or are they going to jack up the price? Let's say that their union overnight says, we want a 30% wage increase, and you're wondering, hey, how do we save money doing this? You want to know about the longer supply line. Let's say that it takes a month and a half to get stuff from China, or maybe a little bit less than that. While you're waiting, you don't have access to your material. Hey, where's my inventory? Well, it's out on the ocean in a ship. You already paid for it. My money is sunk. I can't use it. And so you keep a larger safety stock in your warehouse, and you don't have access to what you've already bought. Well, anyway, you see the problem there. You wonder if your suppliers are technically capable. Can they assist you with new designs? And related to that is, how well are their quality systems? We have ISO 9000 as a system that we borrowed from the Europeans. Let's say you're in China. What are they doing for quality? How can you measure it? How do you know? And another thing, too, is consistent delivery. Now, I know that in some cultures that the whole issue of delivery is a given, that if you promise a certain time, you deliver there. But, there are some cultures that they promise, and a promise is just sort of like an intention, but it isn't really coupled with follow through. Anyway, you get the idea. Now, the last two bullet items, one is, can we have a long-term relationship? Do you want to? Is it necessary? Can you do it? Those are some questions you're going to ask. Finally, do you want to share your patents and proprietary technology, or is it going to be stolen immediately? And sometimes in some places, the government even helps with stealing technology. You've got to be careful. And how do you find out? Well, check with other companies. read the trade journals, do your homework. Now, I'm not going to spend too much on this slide because I think we've already discussed it at length in other places. Culture and language, they're interrelated. They're tied together. Culture, yes, it's all over the place, at home, in the marketplace, in business, at church. It's just all over, and it influences how we do business. What we do in the U.S., we may think, hey, this is a right way to do stuff, but in another country, they may think, hey, we think we know the right way to do stuff. Well, you got to figure out, is there a meeting place someplace in the middle, someplace where you're satisfied and they're satisfied? Language is important because even though we say that English might be the universal language on this planet, English is not the universal language. Bad English is the universal language. Go ahead and do business in other places, but stay away from using jargon or slang when you're talking or writing contracts up. When you're speaking, moderate the speed. Don't talk too fast. And your content needs to be appropriate to what other people can understand. Don't assume just because you understand it that they are going to understand it. Now, this slide is very simple. Do not bribe anybody in a foreign country. Right now, Walmart is a huge example of what not to do. They documented all of the bribes that they did, the big-time bribes, not the small ones, but the corporate-sized bribes that they did for getting building permits and so on. They wrote it down, they documented, they even talked about it. When the U.S. government found out about it and acted on it, and it's being acted on right now, Walmart is having to clean up its act, and they're going to get fined. There is no dollar threshold amount, and what they're going to look at is how big and what was the intent. And the intent was to have a leg up on the competition. And this is not going to go good for them. It won't go good for you. When in Rome, do as the Romans. Well, not when it comes to bribery. What are the future trends? Well, one is that we're going to expect higher skill levels from our purchasing people. We also need to reach agreement on global performance measures of how do we measure and work with our suppliers. And this leads us into integrated systems, and I'm talking largely not just IT, but also how we actually do our manufacturing processes. We're going to be looking at more and more global sourcing. And just as we buy from other countries and from other companies outside, we also need to have greater integration within our own organization. We're going to be looking for world-class suppliers when we go to Brazil or to Mexico or to China. We're going to look for those companies that know how to do business, and they will be rewarded. And they will be working with suppliers in their own countries. We're also going to start stepping away from just buying individual parts. We're going to be asking for subsystems to full systems to even services and systems. Those are the trends in the future. Why is all of this happening? And it's because we want lower costs, and more suppliers in low-cost emerging markets will be able to deliver to us, and we will be buying from them.